everyone. And Adrian's normal thing that he says, write on writers, read on readers. Welcome to the Tuber Book Club on Books by Adrian's platform. I'm your host, Shannon, writing under the pen name of SC Houston. I do have my own channel under SC Houston, but since this is Adrian's book and Adrian's channel, we are hosting it and talking about his book for him here on his channel. I'm also 1/3 of the Self-Publishing Tips and Tricks podcast with Ben Pick from Running to Write, who's one of our co-hosts today, and Morgan Lee, and 1/2 of the AuthorTube Writing Conference duo with Margaret Bernard. The AuthorTube Writing Conference is less than a month away. It happens June 23rd through the 25th. We now have an official sponsor for the AuthorTube Writing Conference, and that's Fictionary, so you'll hear a little bit more about that. And we also have almost $1,800 worth in giveaway prizes for the AuthorTube Writing Conference. So a lot of great things happening for that. So what are we doing today? We are discussing the second third of Adrian's debut novel, MYTHIC, Shadow of the Spark, which happens to be, the ebook happens to be on sale right now. So go grab a copy of that if you haven't already. We've already covered the first third of the book. It is kind of a bigger book. If you haven't seen it, you can see it's kind of thick. Got all my notes in there. And in a minute, I'm going to bring out the other panelists and we'll discuss what we thought of this next third. But just so you know, we will be discussing the last third in 2 weeks from today. And then 2 weeks after that, we'll get a chance to talk to the author himself. All right. So overall thoughts for this second part of 3 is that the story definitely was moving. It moved even faster by the end. When I got to the end, and I don't know if Adrian chose that chapter. I think he chose the chapter to end on for this second third because of it fell neatly and in the thirds category, but it did end in a place like, wait, what? I want to know what happens next. So I did start reading the next chapter. I was like, no, I got to wait. I need to wait. And it wasn't going to be the answer to the question at the end of the last chapter. So I didn't continue on that. There were some things that we'll get to discussing about them that kind of hit on me. And I think probably the biggest things that I noticed were just a couple inconsistencies and still not knowing what CC Day is. So those are my thoughts. All right, so let's go ahead and bring the panelists out and let them do their intros. We'll do one at a time. And we're going to bring on Ben first. Make you big here and then let it tell us. I have a little thing that I'm supposed to say. Tell us about you and nope, I don't remember what I was going to say. Yes, tell us about you.
Awesome. I am Ben Pick. I am Running to Write on YouTube every Monday night at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. I give questionable writing advice through running metaphors. And I do random lists. I bring people on very rarely, but I also try to keep it lively and just do random writing topics. As Shannon mentioned, I'm also 1/3 of the Self-Publishing Tips and Tricks, and we should probably talk about that at some other point. Shannon and I, sorry, offline. I was just stream of consciousness right here. As for the second third of MYTHIC, I really enjoyed it. As Shannon mentioned, the chapter 25 does end on a good cliffhanger, but there is a lot of pieces moving about the board, so we can sort of see where the end game is approaching without being anywhere near it, because we saw the last third. There is definitely an increase in action. There are a lot of, I would argue, graphic fight scenes. There's 1 or 2 torture scenes in there. So we have a lot of very sticky situations that the characters get into that they then need to get out. So Adrian knows how to write well. As we saw earlier, the book is very, very thick, but it is paced well. And since I know what is coming, like I mentioned, I was a beta reader, like I mentioned last time, I was a beta reader for this, so I know what's coming. I know what CC Day is, and so I kind of, even when I was reading it, I kind of had a suspicion that it was like DD Day and What Dreams May Come. So it ended up being something kind of similar. So I wasn't as thrown off about that as Shannon may have been, but I would just say, trust Adrian. There are these little breadcrumbs that go in throughout the story, so eventually they do pay off.
All right, thanks. We'll bring on Miss Emma Bennett.
Oh, hello. I was not expecting to go next. Hello, everyone. I'm Emma Bennett. I'm a UK-based writer, and I write contemporary romance and occasional children's picture book. I really enjoyed the second, third of this book. I'm loving the pacing, getting to know the characters more, and looking forward to discussing it more with you guys.
Yay. And we'll bring on Bethany and give you the full layout screen.
Hi, my name is Bethany Vota. I post videos on YouTube when I feel like it, and I write short stories, which I put into collections, and thrillers, mystery thrillers. Thoughts on the book? Pacing is going very quickly, great. It's a great way to keep us interested. Lots of characters, lots of moving pieces, so there's a lot of pros and cons to that. And yeah, we did kind of end on a cliffhanger, so I just have to put my 2 cents in there as well. It was like, it was a struggle to stop reading, so I'm excited to chat more about this.
Yay. All right. Let me hit the right buttons here. We'll go say hello to everyone in the chat real quick. Again, Adrian's book is on sale, the ebook, for $4.99 if you haven't caught it yet. Andy stopped by. The second to throw a book at the like button, couldn't stick around. And of course, hello, Richard. How are you? And so there's an out there bonking scene, and I want to know more. Out there bonking scene? I mean, there are bonking scenes, but I don't know if any of them are out there. Guess we'll find out as we go through.
I don't think you've got to that one yet.
Okay. Hello, Jocelyn. Adrian needs sponsors. Adrian actually has a sponsor for his channel. So, and that's actually the first person I reached out to for sponsorship for the AWC, but I never got a response. So, and I was like, okay. And it wasn't the first one. There was a second one I reached out to, and they didn't give me a response either. But then I knew they were going to be at the 20 Books at 50K conference. So I went up and introduced myself, and that was to Draft to Digital. So,
oh, nice.
Nice.
Low price of $4.99. Emma cheated and finished the whole book. Did you? You finished the whole book?
Yeah.
Oh.
But I didn't make notes on the third bit.
Okay. You're slightly forgiven.
I guess it's just me and Bethany who everything's going to be a surprise
I
for
know.
us. So, hello, author Ty Williams. How are you? I hope all is well. Hello, Lauren Adele. And hellos. Vote awesome. And then, I'm not taking over AuthorTube yet. Ben takes over BookTube. Alrighty, so let me go to the banners here. We are going to now discuss Mythic Shadow of the Spark. I don't know, do we like us this small? Okay, we'll go with it. All right, so we started with chapter 9. And one thing, I know I was going to say, I totally forgot what I was going to say. But one thing that I thought was really great was that we did find out more about Lear and his backstory. And there's lots and lots of connections that are made between Lear, the people who's in his life, to Miggs, to Faye, and the people in her life. And we'll definitely get to that as we get to those chapters. If I can get to the right chapter here. So big, I can't find it. Okay, so chapter 9, we start off in Lear's point of view. He's actually doing his first job with Senator Bigsby, which, by the way, I had fun going through and figuring out all the names and had fun like, that's how that applies. But there was one name that did not fit. And I'll talk about it when we get to that chapter. And I was like, was that done like on purpose to throw us off? But Bigsby means, I wrote that on the next page. It means abandoned settlement. So he is the senator of the Spark. So if it means abandoned settlement, and this could be totally out there, right? This may not be anything that Adrian's trying to do, but does that mean he's going to be abandoned as a senator? He's going to lose his position here, or he's going to cause something terrible to happen? I don't know. Anyways, I thought that was interesting. So Lear takes his first job. He meets up with a guy named Chavez, who is someone he knew from his past. You learn a little bit about his past. There was one note that I wrote in here. I didn't write it until later when I came back to it. But when he meets up with Chavez, someone from his past, he makes a note, Lear does in the story, that, he is one of the rare blondes. So I'm going to know that because I read it and it kind of stuck in the back of my head. And then as we went through the next few chapters, more blondes kept popping up. And I was like, they're not that rare. Whenever we need a throwaway character, they're blonde. So, but it's just probably something it just stuck on me. The scene ends with the idea that what he's doing is working with other guards, security, special service agents to protect the senators for this 2-week, orgy fest with hookers and everything like that, drugs, all this kind of stuff for 2 weeks. They get to do this, and they have to, not the Secret Service, but they have to protect the senators. It ends with a female coming out of one of the rooms, getting chased down by an old man, and she's laughing or crying. He can't tell. He takes her back in. I thought it was a very good scene, but the scene actually is repeated later on in another chapter. So when I read the scene, I was like, wait, I read this already. There was a few other details, like it said the man being old, now he was fat, and the girl was also blonde in the next scene. So, yeah, the same scene happens. And I don't know if that was on purpose or if Adrian was trying to get to two different things in that, but I didn't pick it up. Maybe you guys might have. So anyways, those are my thoughts about the chapter. I thought it was good. Wrinkled, he had this, he talked about his ma, which you don't know yet in this chapter, but we find out what she really is next. But he has a good simile in there where he says, wrinkled with lines that look like cracked earth in a storied life. Cracked earth feels like it might be somewhat cliche, but then paired with storied life, I thought made it fresh. So that was my thought. Okay, what do you guys thought? What did you think?
I liked it. There was a lot of showing and not telling. So we see Lear has his preparation all set. So he has a safe house. He already knows that in his line of work he's going to need one, and this is great characterization without telling us he's prepared for any situation or something like that, like you just said, where it is close to cliche, but it's it veers off there. Mm-hmm. So I also like that we see his own thought process. There was a moment where he's trying to bust down the door because for some reason it's not opening or whatever, and he risks he's not 100% because he's injured, but he takes the calculated risk to just break down the door and get in as quickly as possible so that way he can fix himself up and get to safety, get new guns, do all this other stuff. And so there was a really good way of showing us that characterization. And meanwhile, we're being drip fed his backstory, his heritage, how he fought in previous war or previous gang violence. And I liked him. I was a little bit, I don't know, I'm kind of on the fence about this one, where it felt like it was too easy for him to get to becoming a Secret Service, because it felt like it was very quick and it felt like they didn't really do a background check. But at the same time, we also saw how they already knew everything about him. Like they knew where his safe house was. They knew all these other little details about him. So it seems like they already just did a background check. And I guess somehow he passed. Which is really surprising given his line of work and his tendencies that we've seen already.
Yeah, but they talk about how Chavez also had the same background. And so I kind of feel like the groundwork was laid there for why he would have been, pulled in as Secret Service agent, because Chavez also came from the same background and they must like his work. Yeah,
but I'm used to like 6 months to a year to get some kind of background checks to go through. And he's taking care of the most important people in the in the Spark, so I figured that, I don't know, it just felt like it was very, very fast.
Yeah,
but they're also the people that can do the checks really, really quickly and know everything about everyone. So
that's
I didn't
why
have
I
a
was on the
problem with
fence.
that. I thought that was kind of cool, actually, that they'd gone and they'd like purposefully chosen him because he's like so hardcore or whatever. Says the romance writer, not having the correct vocabulary to explain what she's going for here.
Yeah, and then I just had 2 more notes. So it was Lear's drama and fallout from dealing with the boss was done in one sentence, because the Chavez just says, oh, hey, you had problems with the boss. Well, now that's all done because you're a made man, essentially. And then we have, oh boy, the senator's a crab metaphor is funny in its depravity. I'm sure Lear's moral compass will never be questioned due to this job, ... So that's all I have for chapter 9. And even though I know the answer to that, I still kind of played it off a little bit.
Well, I really liked seeing Lear starting his new job and kind of trying to fit in and realizing how different he is to a lot of the other people, and then being really pleased when, he meets someone who is kind of from his background and who he knows, and, kind of like, okay, right, maybe this isn't quite as crazy as I thought it was going to be. And I thought Adrian did a great job of just drip feeding the information in. Like you said, Ben, there isn't like an info dump. You don't feel completely overwhelmed. It seems to come just quite naturally in the story, which I really liked.
Yeah, I liked it too. I did feel a little overwhelmed with the amount of characters that we were like getting to know at the same time. But then with the Secret Service thing, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like there wasn't a ton explained about the power that comes with that like Secret Service badge. So I was like, in the end, like it felt obsolete. Like he could have just been a bodyguard, like a different name. We don't really know the like status that comes with Secret Service. So I think maybe it was lost on me a little bit because I just didn't think it was that big of a deal because I don't know what, special privileges come with that, but maybe we'll figure that out later.
Yeah, I guess for me, that didn't pose as much a problem either because I think of what I know from movies, what a Secret Service does and what they can do. So it just it translated for me on that one. But yeah. All right, so we move on to, we're all good with chapter 9, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, chapter 10 was very short. We're in a new point of view. I think we have 3 new point of views are given in this section that we read. And the first one is Roy, which I think is supposed to be like raw. It's Celtic. So it's pronounced differently. And I knew it meant king, something king because of this. So I looked it up. It means red king. And then Pan is his brother who starts off being a shepherd to their sheep, and Pan means shepherd. So I was like, that was like one for one spot on the nose there, right? So they are 2 of the Erdmans. They are approached by their grandparents, who I think are the same ones that we met earlier when Megs went to go talk to the Erdmans. This is the farm where they don't use technology. It kind of reminds me of the Amish a little bit. And the grandparents come to the 2 boys and say, go out there, go get those bodies back of our people and punish those who are responsible. And we're in Roy's point of view, and he's not really liking this. He didn't like it when they had to do it before. They had promised they wouldn't do it again. We don't know exactly what it is, but we can assume from what they're kind of saying what it is. And it's kind of left off with there. I didn't have a whole lot to say. I didn't make any notes actually on the chapter other than just what the chapter was about. So
yeah. I had some of the things. So I don't like any of the Royal Farm family, and that's a good thing for Adrian because they're villains. They're either killers or morally questionable to the point where everyone not in the family they see as beneath them. There's a lot of the primary line of the primary brand, the main trunk of the tree. There's a lot of them looking down on everyone, especially those outside their family, and even those in their own family who either stray or don't live up to their own expectations. So I feel like there are a lot of commonalities between our real life where you might see some of those similar instances. And this might be a little bit of a spoiler. I'm going to kind of try and word it, but knowing where the story goes, I felt it was a little bit weird for how the farmers seemed like they didn't know who killed Bella. It seemed like they had either maybe a small list, but they still had a list of potential killers. I don't know if this will be something that's edited out, but I thought in the future that they had more of a direct line with who the killer may or may not be. So just something to keep in mind for the future if that is or is not changed based on the version that I read.
I would say that at this point, even with the pages that we read, they didn't really know. They didn't know until the boss told them. Right.
So I don't know. Just some little note to keep in mind for when we actually get more revealed in the third of this book.
Okay.
I really loved the change in feel. So you've gone from all the craziness with the senator to this like farm and these shepherds and everything, which just was, I absolutely love that. I love the real change in chapter feels that Adrian does. I did enjoy this chapter. I mean, obviously these people are awful, but they're very good to read about. The visions in the sauna were a little strange, I have to say, but it did kind of fit with it. It did, but yeah, in general, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed getting to know the sort of bad guys more. It was cool.
I thought it was fine. I think the juxtaposition of like this super high tech world with hover cars, and then we have these shepherds was interesting, but I would have loved to have like a little bit more like context and background. Like we know this is a religious order, but clearly these people like know what's going on outside of it. Clearly, like Roy and Pan, we later see can function in this world just fine. But then we also get like a note later that it was a horse-drawn carriage or something like that in town. And I was just like, I'm struggling a little bit with the world building. I think that's what's tripping me up, is because I know this is supposed to be its own unique world, but I keep picturing it as just like Earth, but like 80 to 100 years in the future. And I know that's not what Adrian was going for. So it's just a little bit of a reckoning. And then the whole like bad guys being isolated cultists on a farm. It's a classic idea and we've seen it a lot. So I'm really hoping that we get something elevated from it in the future, because otherwise it just kind of feels like for me, because I've read a lot of like thrillers and whatnot, I've seen this before. So I'm curious to see how it plays out, one, in this world, and then how Adrian takes his own spin on it. So I have high hopes, but the setup, I'm like, okay, yeah, cool. Like, but I'm ready for more. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, I kind of felt the same thing. I was like, okay, this just feels too much like things I've already seen, like in movies. I don't read a lot of thriller books because I'll dream it. But
there's a reason to see that though, is because it's good, it works. It's
right.
So I'm excited to see how he makes it work.
I kind of thought that with the farm as well and what was going on there, but I felt like the bringing in the silver-haired man and his connection to everything, I felt like that was going to be what you were saying, elevating it. I felt like that might be it, but we haven't seen that yet. I mean, we've got the connections. We've got tons of connections going on by the time we finish the second third of the book, which I going into the next chapter, we're ready to move on to the next chapter. Mm-hmm. Right? Chapter 11. So there was a connection from chapter 10 to 11. And chapter 10, you do find out the Erdmans that they pray to Gaia, which a female goddess that they pray to. This is like, you may feel like this is like an entity like God or whatever religion we may have today, where it's a belief system. But then we move into the next chapter, which is with Faye, and she's actually dealing with magic, and we find out later that she also prays to Gaia as well, and she has real magic. So it's like, oh, okay, so there's connections going on here. They're all praying to the same goddess. Who is this? Is this really a goddess? Is this an alien? What is this?
So Gaia was the planet.
I know, but they pray to Gaia.
Yeah.
So
they pray to the planet.
Yeah, they pray to, but I mean, it's same idea like in mythologies, and Gaia in Greek and Roman mythologies, Gaia is a planet, but she's also a female deity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she's like the mother goddess.
Yeah.
Right.
So, but like even then, well, they thought they had magic in the Greek and Roman days, I'm sure, but I don't know if they actually had magic. But here we're seeing magic on the page happening. So we move in with Faye. Faye is going to prison to visit her dad, which is so wonderfully named The Box. Sorry.
I knew that was going to come up.
And so, anyways, she goes there. We find out dad's in jail because of her mom's mom, or her dad's mom. I can't remember which side. It's a grandma.
His mom.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's his mom.
His mom. Okay, so his mom put her own son in jail, which is Faye's father. And we're not told what the reason is. We're not told what it is. We don't even know by the end of this. We do know by the end that there must be a good reason for it, though. The grandmother tells us something, but not really anything. So I don't mind having a little mystery. And I like, seeing clues and finding clues along the way. But I just feel like there's so many little mysteries throughout the book so far. And we have so many multiple point of views that I'm like, by the time I get back to that point of view and we get back to that topic, because we could be back on that point of view later, but we're not going to get back to that topic for a while. It might be a point of view later in the book that I start losing interest in wanting to know what the mystery is. At this point, I'm like, okay, I don't care what he's in jail for at this point, because after reading the second third, I'm like, it doesn't make a difference. I'm not being told what it is, so it must not be important. Other than the reason why he had to go to jail, but not what it was that he had done or didn't do to go to jail. But anyway, so we learned that Faye is supposed to go see her grandmother, who's named Anima, which means the soul, which I think is pretty interesting. And so they go back home. She goes back to the Little Blessing, which is her shop. It's been ransacked. We get the note from her that there's no way they could make it into her home, her apartment, her loft above the the store because of her protections that she's laid down, which then is like, okay, so we're kind of back to like, this idea that, she's got some type of power, some magic. Maybe there's a science behind it, but at this point we're feeling like it's magic. At least it feels like that to me, compared to everything else. I did think the prison, the way the prison was described, like the walls, floors, ceiling, everything was gravity. So, or what do you call that? Where people could walk everywhere. You could walk on the floor, you could walk on the wall, you could walk on the ceiling. And so you saw people all around you, and the way it was described in the book was really, really good. I thought that was pretty cool. All right, what are you guys' thoughts?
I'm going to disagree with you again. I am less concerned about the carrying of the plot, and I actually reached behind me and grabbed a book because you can see that I'm muted. Oh, you're muted. I'm here for the watch time. Oh, she's sorry. I'm reading. Anyways, you can see that Adrian's inspiration is clearly from Game of Thrones, which has like this.
I did think of Game of Thrones. I did, but it doesn't carry the same way for me as Game of Thrones did.
It's not necessarily about carrying it. It's that same sort of mindset where you have tons of different points of views, and each one moves the bar just a little bit further, a little bit further, a little bit further, and each one of them has its own mysteries that you're learning about. So
yeah, but you get mysteries solved in each point of view. You get something solved from the last one, and then a new mystery is introduced. Versus here, we have like the same mysteries continuing. And at this point, I even wrote at the end of the scene, I was like, okay, I'm tired of not knowing when I'm going to find out the answer. So I'm not going to worry about this.
All right. Yeah. So
I'm sorry, Ben.
No. I mean, this is good. We should be disagreeing. Like we read things differently, and we have different, enjoyments that we get out of books. Yeah. So I was less concerned about the breadcrumbs with the unfinished mysteries than you were. But I did like that we're getting Gaia more defined. We get this beautiful visual with the various rings around it, and this makes the space feel so freeing and empty. There's also good lore and hints to answers to the magic, so it does feel like this world is both science fiction and magic, which is a really cool mashup, and it's something that Adrian has mentioned numerous times as where this falls within the genre, which is something very, very difficult to pull off. And then I just have a note of interesting. Faye is haunted by ghosts in a place where her magic doesn't fully work. So I felt like there was something really important about the box that might come back at a later moment. So if she ever goes back there, or if in future books, it might just be more relevant, something to sort of pick apart at a future date.
Yeah, I think I was a little bit confused about the prison island and how it kind of fitted and worked with everything else. But I think kind of reading on in this section, that does become a little clearer, and I have got that at least straighter in my head. I really like the box. Like you say, the gravity thing was very cool. And the fact that Faye's magic doesn't work in there. She can't see the auras and stuff. And it was nice to meet some of Faye's family as well and learn a little bit more about her background. So yeah, I mean, she's my favorite character. I love her. What can I say?
Okay, so I'm gonna kind of jump into the conversation Ben and Shannon were having. I understand where you're coming from, Shannon, in the sense of like we are getting so many more questions and more characters, and it feels like this world is just expanding, very Game of Thrones like every character has their own storyline. But the difference, and we're not saying that this has to be the next Game of Thrones or anything. I think what I'm struggling with is we have so many overlaps and interconnections early on, which I love, but not enough answered questions. And the double-edged sword of that is I'm expecting the best ending. I'm expecting to be like satisfied twists, revelations, because we've just been building question on question on question, and we see it building somewhere. And I know it's really tricky to do. And Ben, probably you both know this because you've written series. How do you like nail the ending of a book while still having more story that you're going to be telling? And so I don't mind that we're constantly getting more mystery and questions, but it's making me anticipate and almost like inflate what I hope the ending will be. Does that make any sense?
Yeah.
So again, like I liked that we got like some questions about you know, Faye's father, we don't know why he's there. Clearly, like, they're unhappy about it. They have a great relationship, which there's a lot that you have to read between the lines. I love that. I love that it's not all spelled out for the reader on the page. Great writing, great craft. But it was also like, okay, we just had another chapter where we just got a bunch more questions and no answers. Yeah. And that's a challenge to work with. And then we do later see, like, okay, there's like a reason that the grandma, you know, testified against her son. We don't know what that is yet at this point in time, but it's like, okay, like we're still pulling the threads of these different mysteries. But this is also, I will say, for the readers out there, this is not a book that you can like put down for a week and then pick back up, because there's so many things going on that I had to reread a few chapters just to like get my bearings again. And I think that's great. There's some of my favorite books of all time. Same situation. So like just a little fair warning for y'all. But anyway, that was my 2 cents. I feel like I just rambled for you.
No. I mean, that all made sense to me. And I think that's what it is. It's more questions than answers. And you know, if I had gotten this chapter with the questions that came with it, and I already had questions before that were already answered, and I felt like, yes, I know the author is going to give me the answer, then I would feel confident knowing, okay, that's okay. I'm going to find out the answer soon. But at this point, I'm like, I already don't have answers to questions I have from previous chapters. Now I have more questions, and I just can't keep track of all these questions that I have and whether or not they're going to get answered. I mean, I'm sure it would make sense if I read the book all the way through, but since we are reading it piece by piece, and I agree with you that you cannot put this book down, because even this next chapter, they talked about the missing persons. And I'm like, what missing persons? I know that we have the 2 people who are dead. I know. I'm like, who the missing person?
Yeah,
And then
I forgot all of the like trophies and whatnot. Same thing.
Yes,
I was like,
serial
wait a
killer,
minute.
yeah.
I was like, what? And I put on there, who, what? And then I was like, oh, that's right. There's this serial killer. So chapter 12, we are in Meg's point of view. Yeah, Meg's point of view. And here she interrogates the boss. We don't really learn a lot, other than perhaps that maybe she doesn't know her job well enough, because she says something about releasing him and the boss, and put it out there that he basically worked with them so that he'll be picked up. And then she has to be told by people in the office, no, you can't do that. That's putting his life in danger. And then she wants to ask questions, and Archie's giving her all this information. Now, Archie's her partner who's on the tech side, and he's giving her all these things he's finding. He's working with her. He's working really hard to get her answers, but she leaves to go find Lear to ask him questions about her case and what he may think. And I thought, why is she tracking him down and asking him this stuff? She's not a cop. First of all, why would you be asking someone else? And the line is put in there that he had seen the video. And I'm trying to remember, I think wasn't Archie there? I don't remember. I didn't go back and look. Was Archie there too to see the video, or he saw parts of it, or he saw something of it, or he knows of it, whatever it is, Archie knows. And I'm like, you have a partner. Why aren't you like doing this with him? So I don't know. But I mean, it didn't stop me. I did like the chapter. And I did like how, where we ended Faye's chapter at the last chapter, right? Her store was broken into. She called the cops. B&E cops came, didn't do hardly anything. So she decides to call someone. And I think, does it say Miggs? I don't know if it says Miggs. Yeah, she does say Detective Inspector Vandersey. And so then this chapter ends with, Miggs getting a call on her RiskCon. And it doesn't say from who, but you know who it is. And it's like, okay, we're bringing these people back together again. That got me excited. So.
Well, yeah, I like that it proved that that everything you said is absolutely correct. I agree with everything you said. I absolutely agree with. So Migdalia proves that she's smart and a little reckless. And I didn't like how somebody else has to say, you can't really gamble with somebody else's life. Like, yes, it's a great idea and it would absolutely work, but he's going to get killed. Like, we can't fully protect him from what's coming. I also had a question about how a horse-drawn carriage was able to evade police, because they have these cars that, we're talking like Fifth Element cars with hovering and everything. And so when I was envisioning this, I was envisioning like a horse-drawn hover car, but even so, that still feels really slow compared to what a hover car should do. So I guess when I read between the lines, or at least my interpretation of it, was that they got a call to basically not pursue, or maybe there's some kind of thing that because it doesn't have any technology in it, the police cars can't find them, or something along those lines. So I kind of maybe jumped through a few hoops to get to a point of like, well, they're special at this point. And then I also, yeah. And then I also like that there was some good Migdalia and Lear flirting at the end of the chapter. So which leads us into chapter 13. So I'm going to say my thoughts for that.
Yeah, I thought it was an interesting choice not to show the bodies being taken, because we're seeing so many people's point of view, and presumably this would be a difficult thing to steal 2 bodies, although perhaps later on in these chapters we do realize how it might not actually be that hard a thing after all. But yeah, I thought it was strange that it wasn't shown and it just happened. And the horse and carriage thing really didn't work for me. I didn't even think that it was like, I don't know, a flying horse and carriage. I saw it's a horse and carriage. And then later on, they use a truck. And I was like, well, how would that work? You know, yeah, like you say, you've got hover cars going around. I mean, it would be on the news if there was a horse and carriage going through these streets, presumably.
Unless it was suppressed.
Unless it was suppressed by everybody walking. I don't know. Like everybody's got their feeds and stuff. I don't know. That was just a little bit dodgy for me, that bit. But I enjoyed the rest of it, and I liked kind of Selena's feed being kind of like discovered and that kind of all coming together. That was fun.
So I was more okay with them not being able to see the character or anything like that, because they can't find their blood. You can't do any forensics on the farmer. So I just kind of assumed that as soon as it sees like something without technology in it, the any sensor just goes blank. So it'd be like there's kind of a
people
void
would
there.
be there. They're driving through the center of the city to get to like the police precinct station, whatever. And what
Yeah, but I assume they would like take out the
outside?
cameras or something, and then they would just, it would just be like a blank space of like, hey, look at something dumb is going on down there. Like, what's going on down there? And it would just be like a blurred or blank or whatever. That was my headcanon, so that's how I made sense.
I
of it.
think I just glossed over the horse carriage. I was like, I don't see how that's possible. Whatever, I'm moving on.
I agree with like Emma and all of you, like how like I feel like this was an important moment, like the stealing of the bodies on the page, to get so much more background about like this cult, because it's like they're not these dumb sheep farmers, even though like their accent and their like cadence makes them seem like yokels or whatever. So I would have loved to have seen like, okay, these people are skilled and they know what they're doing, and that makes them dangerous. I would have loved to have seen a little bit of that in action. But other than that, can't complain about the rest of the chapter. So we wanted more. I think that's an okay problem.
Yeah. All right, chapter 13. We move into Faye's point of view. We're back at her shop. It's a mess. Mig shows up. They go through trying to find out, Miggs asks her the questions, do you see anything missing? Have you logged everything? And then you find out from Faye that, well, they probably weren't really looking for anything here. And I actually think Meg says something along those lines. Like she saw that before with the victims at the beginning of the story. And it ends with Faye and Miggs making out, which I did not see coming. So
I did. I fully expected just like kissing and sex all over the place, because I feel like part of it was sort of marketed that way.
I expected between Miggs and
Lear.
Like
we got the tension with Lear, and
yeah.
I was like, when she went to go talk with Lear about everything, I was like, okay, is this like infatuation or like curiosity? And then the whole thing with Miggs and Faye, I like kind of saw that coming. In the end, though, I was like, there's so much going on with this story. And that's what brought me to the question of genre is important. And I love that we as indie authors get to bend genre. But at the same time, it's like, I don't really know what to expect in this book. Like, is it a romance? Is it a sci-fi? Is it like steampunk? I don't know. Like, do we like, there's clearly the mystery thriller aspect, like murder mystery. So it's just like one of those, it's like, okay, what else can we fit in here? And it didn't like, I don't think it detracted from the story, but I don't think it really added much to it, because there's just so much going on.
And it did add more questions to me, because I was thinking that there was a attraction between Miggs and Lear. I felt like Faye was like a pansexual, like she was attracted to, everybody. But then I didn't see that happening between her and Miggs at all. I just didn't expect that. And so, of course, my mind goes to, well, what's going to happen with Miggs and Lear? Wait, is that going to be a three-way? Is it going to be a throuple? And I started just thinking about all these questions, and I was like, okay.
Sorry, I just talked over you guys. Sorry, continue.
No, we can easily go and
Yeah, we don't have
counterclockwise
to
or
go in
whatever.
order.
Right?
Yeah. Whatever. Yeah, it completely threw me as well. I think especially as a romance writer, it is the emotions and the relationships which are really, really important to me. And I kind of got it into my head, okay, Miggs and Leah, and that's what I was working towards. And so then this happened with Miggs and Faye, and I went like, what? Huh? Did I read it completely wrong between Miggs and Leah? And I actually went back and kind of looked back at some of their interactions. So I was like, no, like I didn't get this wrong. And that's one of the reasons that I read ahead like quickly so that I could see what was going on and kind of understand it in my mind, because that was something that was like, but that is because that's something that's very important to me. It's what I focus on in the story.
Well, and I think that you're not alone in that. And it comes back to like reader expectation and like romance. Typically, it's between two people. Typically. Love that we get representation, like cool, whatever. But then like you just have to think of like marketing wise, like the general audience, like I don't know what the population is, but I assume most of the population is in like a normal like what is that? I'm losing the terms like mono, like what, just two people together. And so like,
most people would be in a
I don't
couple.
know. So it's not like there's anything wrong with it or whatever. Like love the representation. Cool. Like I know that was something Adrian was passionate about including.
Do what you want.
Like
it just came unexpected.
As a surprise. And then it goes
you
back
need to be built up more. Because again, I saw it between Lear and Miggs. I did not catch any signs between Miggs and Faye.
Yeah, and it goes back to that like reader expectation. Like, okay, if we're going to include romance, like that also, like what you said, we need to like include it kind of sooner so it doesn't feel like out of left field.
Yeah.
So, but I'm sure we'll get more. So
I kind of thought the romance in this, for want of a better description, I kind of thought it would be almost like Tom Cruise in an action movie, and that like, you know, the hero and the heroine, they kind of team up and they're working together and then they end up together at the end. And you don't know whether they're going to be together forever, but it's all very passionate and it's great. So that's kind of what I was building towards. And then I feel like it's like, oh, okay. So this is something different that we're going with. And it feels like there's going to be more romance than I was expecting in the book, but in a very different way.
And the thing with the more romance part is like at this point in time, it's not a focus for me. It very, very much feels like a very low subplot compared to everything else going on. I mean, we just had people steal bodies. Like, come on, like things
you've got people being murdered and kidnapped, left, right, and center, and then randomly you've got this, and it's like just stay on one path for like 5 minutes.
But that's just me as a reader. I know some people, like my sister, like will not read a book unless there is romance in it. And I'm like, more power to you, girl. Like you like what you like. So this is just purely my own, my own personal taste.
Yeah, so this was good. I'm going to build off of what Shannon said earlier about how there are so many, or I guess what all of you have said so earlier, where there's just so many details that are built up, and we need to kind of keep track of them. So going back to a much earlier chapter where it was just Migdalia and Faye together, I did feel like there was a little bit of flirting. But then so we're in chapter 13. In the previous chapter, it's Migdalia and Lear, and they are both like, okay, so Lear flirts with everyone. That's kind of a given at this point. But did feel like Migdalia was kind of reciprocating at that point. And so then we have, like, we need to keep in mind Migdalia with Faye from a couple of chapters earlier, and then we have to reconcile that with chapter 12 where Migdalia and Lear are flirting, and then we get this moment. So it did feel like there were those breadcrumbs in there, but it's just that we're trying to keep track of too many breadcrumbs.
And I did feel it from Faye, but I just felt like that was because she was a pansexual, not because that she was specifically zeroing in on going after Miggs. So I did not feel it from Miggs at all, and from what I remember. So well, all right, chapter 14. Here we actually learn that Lear and his sister Harley, they live with their mom, which has only been brought up once so far, but she's actually a Borg. I'm trying to remember exactly what the term was. I think of like android / Borg. I don't know I think there's definitely a difference made at some point in the book, but I don't remember which one's which. But she's not human, and Harley doesn't like her. And so Lear comes home to find his mom beaten up, but it's got android parts or whatever, got robot parts everywhere, and leaking fluid. So then he sets her up so she can repair herself, and then he goes to find his sister. She's like in a den for like what I feel like is like gamers, like what a gamer would go into to go play games. And they leave, but as they leave, they come across the silver-haired man, which has been a few times now in the book. And Lear and the silver-haired man, he was following them. That's what it was. He was following them. Lear gets out and cuts the seatbelt or something of the silver-haired man's car or something. A belt was cut. And then so they get into a fist fight or blade fight, and Lear ends up getting stabbed. And I thought that part was like really well done. The knife scene was well done. I really love the language there. And then Harley ends up stopping it. She's talking to the guy, but the guy ends up leaving. We don't know what's being said because Lear's going in and out of consciousness. And then they go to a building with the angel singing, and we're given the numbers 2323, which we just learned in a previous chapter is Faye's her room, her loft number, or whatever you call that apartment in her building. So we figure they're going to Faye. So we're like, okay, we're going full circle here. So overall, I think this is well done. I didn't have any questions here. I also like the brother and sister, like the communication between them back and forth. It felt very brother sisterly like. I really like that. I like the scene I liked this chapter. So I didn't have anything negative to say about this chapter.
Yeah, same. The action was wonderfully written. I have a couple of lines here of just good description. So we have the eyes being described as solid black, the eyes of a shark. And then we have, so it looks, sorry, my notes don't make any sense there. But it's just more positive things about how I see. So Lear's in a fight with this killer, and it shows that he is completely and utterly outmatched, even though we've seen him be very, very well versed in fighting before, and even being able to take down somebody who was stronger than him, somebody who was on speed him. And here we see that he just can't do anything. So we get a really good, like, Lear's already, almost superhuman in his abilities, and so we now get the murderers even better at that. So it feels like it's going to be a joint effort to maybe take him in. And then obviously I always like when the main point of view characters start intersecting. So we get Lear's back with Faye, and given that he has a knife wound to the chest, he's probably going to be shirtless. So, more weaving of some of that romance in there.
Make a note on that real quick. I said this behind the scenes, I think, Ben, before you came in, but there was a lot of nakedness in these chapters. And it used to be a running thing with me and my friends when we were all reading fantasy, we were in our teenage years, that if there was a lot of nakedness, it meant there was a male writer, and it didn't have to be just female nakedness. If there's nakedness in the book, it was a male writer, because that much nakedness always meant a male writer. And so it took me right back to that stereotype that me and my friends always had, that we could tell if the fantasy writer was male or female just by that.
Fair enough.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
In his defense, though, knife wound, you do really need to take off your shirt.
Yeah, I can understand the knife wound, but then there's a scene where the person didn't have to be totally naked. So I don't know.
Yeah, they just like to get naked. Yeah, really, really great fight scene. I was actually doing stuff about fight scenes in my writing class last week, and I might take this one along with me to go over, because it is so fast paced. I just really liked it. Although it is quite kind of this happens, then this happens, and this happens. There's quite a lot of emotion in there as well, and it really, really kept me hooked. I did feel a little bit sorry for Lear, though, because everyone's just slapping him like several times while he's got these really bad wounds. People are just slapping him. And I'm like, you could just kind of give him a little shake or something. Stop slapping the poor man. Why?
Yeah, I had no complaints about this chapter. It was fast. It was quick. I like that we got the characters together. So, yeah, that's my thoughts.
All right, chapter 15, we're in Meg's point of view. This is when Meg thinks about asking about the religious background of all the people who went missing. They're still trying to figure out, what do all these missing people who are possibly victims of the serial killer, what do they have in common? What is it that makes a serial killer want to kill? And we do get some of those answers before the end of this third of the section. She ends up trying to track down, right? She gets the address to Cyrena, but before she gets there, she gets rammed by the Erdman boys, and that's Pan and Roy. And next she wakes up and she's naked. So it is this scene. She's naked and being tortured basically by Pan, and Roy doesn't like it. And I'm thinking, okay, there's got to be a reason why she's naked. Why is she naked? The only thing I could figure out, and this was in another scene, another chapter further on, is that she saw all the other police uniforms of other victims that the Erdmans had taken and tortured and killed. And I thought, but still, you didn't see underwear. She could have had her underwear on still. She didn't have to be naked.
Why did they take the uniforms off first? Do they like want to keep them clean and not get blood in them or something? Like
they kept it as a trophy, which they could have just taken off after they killed her. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know why she had to be naked for this scene. So
no.
but I liked it.
I thought this scene was like fine. The only thing that like really like the part that my brain still can't keep up with is the world building. So we've got these like super smart cars on autopilot. Like my brother-in-law's Tesla can avoid a car accident. So how did that happen? And it just seemed so convenient, and just it felt like something we would have seen in a Tom Cruise movie, not in this like new, epic world. That was just, again, I think it's just me struggling a little bit with the world building. So I think I'll just like ignore it, because it's like, it doesn't change the story. It doesn't do anything like that. It was just my one thought of like, I'm just confused. And then it was the Erdman boys were in a truck, and I was like, oh, so we gave up on the horse.
They gave up on the horse and carriage.
But no, other than that, I think great action, great sequencing. Pacing is like on fire. I'm flying through the book at this point. Like, cannot complain.
Yeah, I'm flying through. But I feel the same as you. I've kind of given up on trying to figure out what the technology is supposed to be, because even later they have a toilet with a lid, and I'm like, wouldn't they have something better by then?
I can't keep up. The only thing was just like, I guess it was good. Like, it surprised me that the truck hit her out of nowhere. Yeah, because I was surprised, but I was also like, okay, I was imagining like she was working, her car was driving herself. Like, how does that realistically happen? So maybe the world's a little bit more chaotic, kind of like Fifth Element style. Like, I don't know. Yeah. We're working on it.
We also do learn that the Erdmans, even though they seem to have no technology, they have some type of technology blocker. And was it in this chapter that's noticed, or later on Miggs figures it out? I don't remember where.
Miggs figures it out like later on. She says, "Oh, I'm guessing that's what must have happened, because they block her, don't they?"
And it's possible that it's not written in there, but later when that happens, I mean, we could have seen it in the scene. If they had this technology that blocked everything and shut off all her stuff, right? Or maybe it was in there. I feel like maybe it was, where it shut down her car. So now her car no longer had autopilot, and it allowed her to get hit. But if that's not in there, maybe having that in there would help.
Yeah, so there was some problems with the technology, but I thought when I read it, it was because the car was hit and then she had the problems because, things got banged around. I didn't think it was before the
That's
car
what I
crash.
assumed.
Yeah.
But then when she couldn't call anybody, that's when she realizes they probably have technology. Now, if Adrian used that,
later on she says, doesn't she?
So if Adrian used that at the beginning of this, where like all of a sudden her car starts shutting down and she can't get anything to work, and then she's rammed, that would take care of that problem.
Yeah, but it was exciting. It was cool.
Yes, I thought it was a good chapter. So
very solid.
Yeah. All right, are we ready for 16? I know we've only got a few more minutes left before.
I gotta duck out. Yeah,
you gotta head out. So chapter 16 is in Faye's point of view. She visits the grandma. That's when she finds out the grandma basically has seen the future, and that she sees the future, and she tells Faye that she can open up more of her own magical powers. And there's a reason why she sent her son to jail, so that Faye could do what she's doing right now and have this moment right now with her. This chapter is a little bit longer. There is some, I did right here, feels gratuitous that all women are naked so far, because it is all mostly women at this point, and we're always naked. Now we do get a naked man later, but it did felt gratuitous that we always have naked women, and it's back to back. And I'm like, why? But there's a few typos, like the wrong word for coal. The wrong coal was used, but the wrong pedal. It says pedal like a car pedal, but it meant a flower petal, but it wasn't spelled like a flower petal, but it was supposed to be a flower petal. So just a couple of typos in this chapter where I hadn't seen anything for a long time. but I like the chapter overall. Okay, so this is where Lear comes in. I wrote some notes and I forgot to look at it. Lear comes, right, well, he's there, right, because he's getting fixed up, and she takes him to deprivation tanks, which I think is really cool because we have those today. And they're connected through the deprivation tank, but then what we don't have probably is that, the element, be able to go into the past and relive our memories. And we learn that they had once slept together as strangers.
But that's not in this chapter. That's later on.
It says smokes her and connects to more frequencies. Oh, that's later on. Okay, so I have connects to more frequencies. Oh, sorry. So she's smoking and she's connecting to frequencies of plants. That's what I meant. See, I have writing that I can't really tell what it is. Which one is this one? Okay, so that's later. Sorry. So she learns more about magic and herself, smokes her. I don't know what I'm writing there. It connects to more frequencies. Lear and sister show up. Okay, so that's not here. That's later. Sorry, wrong chapter.
Spoilers. It's okay. We're gonna get to it.
No.
Ben, you can talk about that future chapter too. Then, since you're not going to be here probably for it.
Yeah, I was just going to say I didn't like some of the backstory as much because it feels like the grandmother. This is now years removed from when she testified, and it's like, oh well, I did that because we needed to get you to this moment, but I didn't necessarily. I always. That's one of my pet peeves where it's like I had to do this so that we could get to this moment, and I saw the future, and I knew like this, then the other thing, dominoes would need to fall, and so I had to set up the course of the event, and you were traumatized because I made this decision to get you here, and so I do. That is one of the things I don't necessarily like when I'm reading a book. Is I saw the future and I decided to change it, and so now you have to suffer because of my decisions.
Yeah, if we could know what it is and what that repercussion would be, it would be helpful. But we don't know what that is. And that's just another question on top of all the other questions that I haven't had answered yet.
Yeah, and I feel like we don't have enough background on the new character of the grandma and the new character of the father to really understand the whole story. So we're making a lot of assumptions because maybe the grandma's talking about another event and there's more to the story because she said 20 years, blah, blah, blah. We just don't know, but I agree, Ben. Okay, this feels like it should pack more of a punch than it does.
And the grandmother basically says, try harder to learn your magic.
Yeah, and it might pack more of a punch later, but I feel like, I don't know. Hard to say right now, but I get where you're coming from for sure.
Yeah, I would have liked more of the grandma. I would have liked to have known why she did what she did, and I think that would be the time for her to say as well. It would be a natural time. Her granddaughters actually come to her after all this time, and I think she'd go into it more. She wouldn't just say, off you to go and learn your magic.
All right, Ben, do you want to do your outro and head out, or do you still have a few more minutes?
No, I gotta head out.
Okay.
I gotta get back to work. So I am Ben Pick, Writing to Write every Monday night, 7 p.m. Eastern time. This past week, I did an outro of everything I learned at my first con as a vendor for my 2 books. And next week, I'm going to be talking about injuries and sort of getting out of a writing groove and how to try and overcome them and get back into it. So,
bye, Ben.
Take care, everyone.
Bye.
Have a great night.
Bye.
I like having his point of view. I'm going to miss not having it for the rest of this.
And there were 3.
Well, I mean, I think because him and I were fantasy readers, and I feel like this is fantasy heavy in this section of the book. So it's kind of interesting to see how he looks at it versus me when we're both fantasy readers / writers. All right, chapter 17 is Roy. We're back from his point of view. Second time we're in his point of view. This is they're still. Yeah, they are torturing. Couldn't think of the word. I was like punishing. No, that's not the right word. Torturing Migs and trying to get information. And man, she's really taking a lot. And then she gets out of her own body. So man, this girl is tough. Although there was in my mind, it was there that okay, she's going through all this. There's going to be some post-traumatic stress from this. There's got to be because you're naked. I mean, naked. You're vulnerable in your most vulnerable state in being beat. But then I'm trying to remember where this is a very short chapter. I didn't write anything. I'm trying to remember everything that happened here. Meg's being beat by Pan. Roy knocks him out, helps Meg, suggests corruption at her job. That's all I wrote. So
yeah, I I struggled a little bit with this chapter. Like, I love that we got to see Migs be her like cool, like amazing, like capable woman. But when she's just like kind of word vomiting to Roy, like what's happening, like I highlighted, like I'm investigating their murders. If you want justice for family, you should never have taken me. Now I have to arrest you. I'm like, girl, you're just dumb. Like, just get out of there. Like,
Yeah,
just,
I was thinking that too.
like,
I didn't
I
write
was
that.
like, what are you doing? And so it just kind of felt like repeating information just to repeat it, like maybe to help recall the readers, but like this is the central part of the book, in my opinion. Again, we have a lot of things going on, but I feel like the murders and like solving the murder / like who is the serial killer, is it connected, is the guiding plot point for me. And so it was just kind of weird, like, okay, we don't really need a recall for that, but again, it was just more of like, okay, cool, she got out, she's amazing, like we're gonna definitely like see how this impacts her later, but also like, why are you just like standing around? Like, let's go.
I was like, especially since she Roy had said he knocked his brother out, but he didn't think it was going to take very long before his brother would come to.
Yeah.
Like, okay,
that clock was ticking.
Yeah.
It was making me nervous.
Like, come on, can we
chatting? You want me to get some tea? Like, let's go.
Yeah, I mean, what she went through was very, very violent, and the fact that she was naked, and the language used to describe it, she's being punched really hard in the face. You think she would have lost teeth, all kinds of things. But then but then Roy comes back in the room, and it's very sexualized. Like, I have the passage here. Roy had never seen a woman like this, muscled and fierce, beads of sweat streaming down her arms and legs. Her chest heaved and glistened with blood and spittle. Her wild hair was a tangled mess of more sweat and blood. And I was kind of like, really, like, it just didn't ring true for me. It felt very much like a male writer writing a very sexualized portrayal of someone, and I didn't like it. I didn't like the fact that she was naked and that she'd gone through this, and then she's made to be sexualized afterwards. It didn't sit right for me.
Yeah, it made me a little bit uncomfortable, and that might have been part of the point if we didn't just kind of see Migs kind of just like handle it. Like, I don't know, if I was in that situation, I'd be like trying to cover up. As soon as I got out, I tried to leave. Like, she was just kind of like hanging out there, like
talking.
Yeah, and
but like,
and I know, like,
Lear gets beaten up. Lear gets beaten up. He doesn't have his clothes off.
Yeah.
Well,
and that's the thing, though, is like the cause and effect. Like, the cause is she is like viciously attacked, and the effect is she's coherent, she's fine, teeth. Like, it just. It felt more like a spectacle than a a true action that would impact the story.
And also, like, the car had been smashed by a truck.
And I was wondering about that.
And the police were on their way, but they somehow got the car. Did they tow it? Did one of them drive it? And the car's still working. And they get it back, and then he says that she can drive it back to the police station
and make a report. And I don't know, if
like,
you've been hit a few times in the head, like, you got a concussion, you're not thinking clearly, you're not rational. And we kind of see that later with her, but like, it was one of those where I was like, okay, the author here is really good at writing action sequences and violence. And so he wrote that really well. And we can see, like, this was vicious and brutal. And that's where it ended. I don't know. Just thought it was a little, I don't know. I'm glad I wasn't the only one that kind of felt like that, but
I made notes, and then next, when we're next in our POV, she just goes right back to work, starts doing what she's doing. She does report it. I'm like, someone in that situation would be kind of broken for a minute, at least for a good minute,
And then my thought was, like, we could have cut out this whole chapter, her getting kidnapped and her interacting with the Roy brothers, and Roy could have slipped her a note, and this whole thing would have been obsolete because it didn't affect the story.
Yeah.
And so that was the part for me that was like, that kind of like nail in the coffin for me of like, this just felt off. Was we could have taken this out and it really wouldn't have changed much of the story at all.
And in fact, it would have been, the rest of the story would have been easier, because you wouldn't be thinking she just really got beaten up like a few hours ago.
Yeah. How
is she walking? How is she functioning?
Now, but she does have some repercussions because of the fact that she doesn't report everything right away. She has repercussions, but that could be worked in some way. And the thing is, honestly, I feel like the repercussions were redundant because they were going to take the case away from her anyway. So.
Yeah, but other than that, like, so it's hard to like critique a book like this because I was like, it was written really well. It was really graphic. It was like, I could see everything.
Yeah.
But it was also like, so then what? It's like, you know, when storytelling, when you're reading a story, it's like, if an action happens, then what? Or because of this, what happens? And we're not really getting that. But we might later. Who's to say?
We're ready for the next chapter?
Yes.
Yep. All right, so this is the next one in Harley's point of view. And one thing I really liked about this is that whenever I always think of one of the main things that they say about writing multiple point of views is that you choose the point of view of the person who knows the least. And that was definitely true here. Harley didn't know anything about magic. She didn't know what Faye was doing. And we see that Faye says, well, okay, he needs a doctor, but, you know, not getting a regular doctor because, you know, he just started a new job with the senator, doesn't want that reported. And so then Faye takes her to this underground world that Harley kind of remembers. They went to these underground tunnels, but they're moving and Faye is just going. Faye also has this collection of dirt and plants and jars that have powers of some sort, or they're special in some way. It's not really explicitly told. I don't think that we really need to be told, but we do know that they're somewhat special. It adds to her magical abilities. And I didn't feel like her magic was this powerful, though. I have to be honest, from the very beginning. I felt like she was like kind of it, but it was kind of like dabbling in magic. And she's supposed to be growing, but I'm not really seeing a growth. I'm seeing here she's dabbling, and now all of a sudden she's got all this magic. So I really didn't see that jump there. So I think it was well done. That was written in Harley's point of view. As far as you know, they do come across a person that Talib. I just like that his name means seeker of knowledge. I like that. There is a section here. It's just the language. So there's a section where this is at the end of the first scene before the scene break. And it says, you know, they were going on an epic quest. We're ready. We're off. Off we go on our epic quest. And I was like, epic quest. We don't need it back and forth there. Both of them. I'm like, okay, so, you know, we make mistakes. We kind of double up on words. Very next paragraph. They began exiting the building through the basement, and not just the basement, but the very bottom floor of the basement. Why through the basement? And then the basement's 2 sentences later again. And I'm like, okay, that's 5 basements in 4 sentences. So I'm like, I don't know why. It caught my ear between the 2 epic quests and then the 5 basements back to back. And I was like, okay, there's just language, nothing really wrong with the text itself. I thought this was interesting. We met another person. We learned a little bit more about the culture, a little more world building. At this point, I don't know if I really wanted more world building when I still have so many questions with the other world building that's going on. And I don't understand all that yet, but I do think it's kind of a cool part of the culture. So.
Yeah. I had mixed feelings about this being in Harley's perspective because I feel like I'm still trying to get a handle on who Faye is as a person, who Lear is as a person. Like, I love getting the backgrounds from them and like learning more about them, like what's pushing them forward, their motivations. And we're like over halfway through the book. Like, we got a new character introduced she wasn't introduced, but we got to be inside of her mind, seeing what she's seeing over halfway through the book. And so it just might probably be me and just my own personal preference, though. But I was just like, oh my goodness, another character. Here we go. But it really did help that we were already with characters that we already knew. We kind of already had some background with her, so it didn't totally feel like exhausting to read. And I really liked the chapter too. So
the first Harley chapter, I felt like that. I was like, oh, another character point of view.
Yeah. So.
And I feel the same way. I want to know more about our 3 main characters. I want to be in their points of view more. But it did feel like in this scene, like Faye knows a lot about herself and her magic that wouldn't have been explained to us or shown to us if it was in Faye's point of view. But I do like Faye. She's my favorite character. Like Emma is my favorite character too.
So that's why I'm saying, like, oh, it could just be a personal preference because I really like Faye too. I understand what you were saying with like her magic though, because it feels not convenient, but it definitely felt like when we first read Faye, she could read auras and she could guide people through their dreams and drug-induced hazes and whatnot. Like, but it almost felt very passive and just something she could do. And then all of a sudden we're seeing like she can do so much more. Was she always able to do that? It felt a little convenient, but also now I'm just more curious at the same time. So I think it worked, but that's my
I would have liked a bridge in between to show us a little bit of her either growing or that she had this previous knowledge already. And that my first assumption was not, I had the same first assumption you did, where she just kind of dabbled in it. It was just kind of something she did on the side with her store or something, you know, things like that. It wasn't something that but then we learned about the spell on her loft. And I'm like, well, what is that? How'd you do that? Where did that magic come from? How does that connect to magic you already have? So that's kind of building up the magical lore there, which from fantasy, you know, you can have soft magic systems, but even with soft magic systems, we like to have rules. So, anyways.
Yeah, I think when Faye was first introduced and we first saw her seeing the aura of her girlfriend at the time, I think that was the first thing that we knew about her having magic. I think it might have been nice if after the girlfriend leaves and she's going around the store, if it kind of opened up a little bit more of what her actual powers were, so that we had a firmer footing for it. The quest and the basement thing, that also I picked up on that, and that was kind of. But I mean, SD, I hear what you're saying about Harley being the person who knows the least, but honestly, I don't care about Harley. I just don't. She's a side character. I don't care. Like, she's there as a side character for her brother to look after, basically, and as part of her brother's history. I want to know about Faye. She's the character that I'm following. She's the character I care about. It should have been her doing it, and it should have been from her mindset, so that we know, okay, like, does she want to go to see this doctor? She had bad dealings with him in the past. Is she, you know, how much of a risk is she taking on herself to help these people who she doesn't really know? And I think that would have made a more interesting chapter. Although, like, I did really enjoy it. I enjoyed it all. I'm just kind of, we're nitpicking.
But she did recognize Lear. We get that from, she said that she recognized him. So we would have had that recognition. If we had been in her point of view, we have known that recognition up front before they went to the deprivation tank and were like, oh, wow, they actually knew each other. They actually had sex before. You know, that was kind of a surprise thrown in, which I kind of like that surprise. But yeah, I mean, I think it's a loop. Right. So Harley was best, I think, for POV in this because of the fact that we don't know about Faye's magic. Had we been in Faye's point of view, we might have still seen just passive stuff or seen stuff that we didn't understand what it was when we felt like her magic was less than before. Versus if it had been built up or shown before and then we're in her point of view and we're shown this other stuff, it would have made sense. I don't know. Anyhow, that's what I'm thinking in my head from what you guys said.
and the whole underground kind of world as well. Like you say, it's another level too much when we don't understand the previous levels. I almost feel that it would have been really nice to have brought that whole thing in like the second book or something like that, so that there was a new bit of the world to explore in the second book, rather than all these.
Might very well be.
We're going to have a whole nother spark. It's going to be spark 2.
Spark 2.
All right. Next chapter is a mix. There was good things. There was terrible things.
Which chapter are we in? 19?
This is chapter 19. Okay. So this is where CC date is mentioned again. I still don't know what it is. I know that I know Ben, he's like, I'm okay with not knowing because he knows what happens later, but there's a piece of information that is paired with her CC date. I don't know if it's actually 1-for-1, like it is from that, but we get this idea that, who is it? Her boss tries to touch her on the shoulder or something. We get the idea she doesn't like to be touched yet. That's what it's saying. Yet she's touched both Lear and Faye. And then in a chapter in the future, she does something with Archie. She touches with Archie in I don't remember what it was now.
Hug, yeah.
Was it a high five or something?
A hug, I think.
Oh, hug. Okay. Yeah, that's right. Hug that turned into a handshake. And I was like, but I thought she didn't like being touched. And the thing is what I was thinking, she doesn't like being touched. We're just now being told this. And we are over halfway through the book that she doesn't like being touched. It's not talked about anywhere else. And it's not talked about in the future anywhere else. So I thought, well, is this something that Adrian maybe wanted to have to pair with whatever happened on CC Day, or was something that came from it and then he took it out and just forgot to take it out here? Or I totally was confused by this. I was like, she doesn't like being touched, but yet does it already with several people. So
anyway. Yeah, this one felt a little out of place for me as well, but in the grand scheme of things, I was like, all right, let's move on.
Yeah, I didn't understand why she walked to the station and she didn't just like call for help.
Yeah, especially if we're on like a time crunch, like things.
Yeah, like this is important stuff, and it's supposed to be like really in the middle of nowhere. This this huge farm, Is it really kind of walking distance when you're hurrying and when you've been beaten up?
And I feel like we could maybe excuse it, like, oh, she's got a concussion, but we don't really talk about it other than like, you have bruises on your face. And it's like, yeah.
And I would think she would have a hard time talking. All this stuff. If she was being beat in the face as much as they were saying,
yeah,
she would be swelling up. You know, she hasn't had any ice or anything. I don't know. Unless she had first aid. Did she ask about first aid?
She did have a first aid kit in the car that she
So
later couldn't drive, I think.
Right. And that's what I was wondering. It's like, well, okay, what's in the first aid kit? Is there like a shot, like from the future, you had the shot, bang, it helps to get rid of your bruises and swelling faster or something? I don't know. But nothing like that came out of it. And I thought that'd be some cool technology.
There was one line that kind of threw me. It said page 306 for like Kindle, so I don't know if it's like that for the print, but it talked to Migs was saying how her Girl Space Scout skills got her out of the notes or the ropes. I could not tell if this was being like, if this was actually a cliche, like Girl Space Scouts, is that a thing? Or if it was just like satire.
No, I thought that was quite cool, like that they still have a version of Scouts and that they still do knots, like in this future thing. I actually quite like that. I thought that was quite
I guess
cute.
It just confuses me with the world building still, because it just feels like we're so, I guess I just can't get a handle on the world building. And that I think is more of a me problem, because it seems like you guys are not struggling like I am.
I mean, I'm struggling with not having all the answers. I mean, not that I had to have all of them, but I get more and more questions without getting answers. And that could be the world building / bringing in all the characters and all the different plot lines. And it does take some finesse to get all these different stories weaved in together. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm having trouble with the technology for sure. And I think that's, you kind of keep going back to like the technology thing, like the horse and buggy. You know, I talked about something last time. I don't remember what it was now. Where I was like, well, when they have something better than, what was it, telephone or something on the wall?
Was it sockets?
Sockets. Oh, sockets.
Yeah,
it was on the wall.
Yeah.
I was like, they're already talking about having houses without having sockets because electricity is going to run through the floors. So wouldn't they have something like that in the future? So yeah, I've had trouble with like, are we taking 2 steps in the future and then we take 1 step back and we're right back where we are right now? You know, so that I'm having trouble trying to keep up with like, what does the technology actually look like? And the thing is, we can't stop and really explore that in any depth or see it through a character's point of view for too long before we're moving on to here's another mystery to solve. So,
but I will say, like, I think that's one reason why I can overlook the, like, I'm a little confused about like what this actually looks like, is because we have such a strong plot point, and like that's what I care about. So everything else just seems kind of obsolete. So like, for those of you watching, we really are enjoying the story. We were just talking about before we got on, like how we can't wait to keep going. This is us just being like nitpicky and just shared confusion. So like the writing is strong. Like what's written is generally like strong, good pacing, great motivations from the characters. It's just sometimes we're just like, wait a second, like let's pause. I'm a little confused about how this is all coming together.
And I did make some suppositions, which I think ended up not being true, right? Well, yeah, it's not, but maybe the serial killer, it's not a serial killer, but the people who have been disappearing are the ones at the farm people are doing that. The people on the farm are making them disappear. But then we find out that the silver-haired man is most likely the serial killer, and he also he's not part of the farm. So, but I did start making that supposition. I did like that. I forgot to mention that Pan was a blonde. And then we have another blonde put in here. Anyways, I just picked that up since it said that blonde was kind of rare. And I was like, but every character is like blonde after this. But I don't know. Sorry. I get like little notes get stuck in my head. But yeah, I mean, all of the writing was strong. I kept moving through. I think at this point I was having a hard time stopping to try to write down notes. And I actually went a couple chapters. I was like, wait, I got to go back and write some notes. What did I find? What did I think? And so, because it's really started picking up right about here, about chapter 18, 19 for me, started really picking up.
Yeah, the pacing is really good. I didn't understand why she turned in her gun and her debt specs and when she got to the station, and then why she wasn't issued with more before she went out again.
I think she turned in because it was damaged. That's what I kind of got, but then I didn't understand why she didn't get more. I was like, well, it was damaged, but don't you have more on hand?
Because, she'd need to have a way, to be contacted and to do the usual stuff when she's going to interview people. So, and were they damaged? I don't know.
Something I don't think we talked about too in the previous chapter, and I think this was chapter earlier, where the very first chapter of this section that we were reading, we learned that the Freemasons, it was kind of thrown out there as Freemason stuff, right? And we're like, oh, okay, so this is something like the Freemasons. I was thinking it was going to be something different from the Freemasons, and we find out that it is Freemasons. So I do think it is a interesting piece of lore how that continues on, and I don't know if it's in this chapter where they find out that they're the reason why.
It's at the very end of chapter 20 is when she's speaking to Mrs. Tillman. She's speaking about her husband, what was he being welcomed into? The Freemasons. I really liked that. I like the way that there's certain things like the Scouts, if you like, that have carried on, even though humanity's changed and they've even got a different home as well as hovering cars and things. I quite liked that the Freemasons were still going. Thought that was quite clever.
Which we find out the reason why they're still going later, which is I thought might be in this chapter, but it's not in this one. I mean, overall, I kind of at this point suspended my disbelief because seeing this chapter from Mick's point of view, I was like, but she's hurt. She was just naked, tied up, and being beat. She should need to take like a breather. And I was like, well, and on one hand, I was like, she's just a tough lady. And I'm like, I don't know. So I was like, okay, she's just a tough lady. Let's go on with it. So and I think there is a line that kind of speaks to it where I don't know if it's her boss or friend or someone in the precinct says something to her about this just happened to you. You need to take some time off or something. She's like, no, I've got this. But having been to war and seen and been around my unit, in part because parts of my unit were sent north up into Iraq, and they had to catalog all the dead bodies. They didn't actually have too many attacks on them. They just cataloged dead bodies, and seeing how they changed just from that. They weren't getting beat up. They weren't being shot at. I mean, it's just, I don't know. I just, having seen things. I just feel like this would have more of an impact, but I did suspend my disbelief. The writing was good though. Yeah. Chapter 20 is Lear. So this is the deprivation tank one.
Yes.
So I actually love this chapter. I guess I could almost argue I would have loved to see this from Faye's point of view, because I do like Faye a lot. We haven't been in Faye's point of view for a while, but at the same time, again, we're choosing the character who doesn't know as much, because Faye knows that they've been together before, but he doesn't remember. So we learned a little bit more about Faye's protection spell. I mean, we don't know much about how it's done, but we do learn from the Shadow Man, because he shows up. I put Shadow Man, but that's a silver-haired guy, where he says that he'll be able to break her spell and get into her home. It's not enough to keep him out. I really like this chapter. I didn't have a whole lot written down here. Tomami is someone who's talked about quite a bit. I forgot to say, but his name meant intellect and wisdom. He was a mentor to Lear and his sister Harley. When Lear is describing Faye, he says a tall angel with long legs, fire hair, and galaxies on her skin, which her freckles are talked about quite a bit. So I automatically went to the galaxies on her skin are all the freckles. I really loved that explanation or that description. I thought it was really pretty. By the end of this, I was like, I had already been thinking this a while, but I finally wrote it down. I was like, I think the Shadow Man, silver-haired guy, he's an alien, which we don't know who his name yet, but I'll tell you what his name is. But I think he's an alien of some sort. So that's my thoughts anyway. What are you guys'?
I don't really have anything for it. Yeah.
I mean, I liked it. I thought it was very clever. I liked the tanks. I liked that everyone was naked this time.
Oh, I know. That's just like, okay, it's not just a gal who's naked.
But everyone's bits are hanging out. We're happy now.
Yep.
He did have major surgery, and then she's getting him to go down like flights of stairs into a basement, and then he catches her when she like nearly passes out after being all shiny, which was a bit like, I just feel that the injuries weren't properly taken into account, maybe to a certain extent, but like, it was great. That's really me just being like me and picking little things. It was, I wouldn't have been able to put it down halfway through the chapter. I was completely carried away with it.
That's where I wrote in my imaginary draft that the medicine that he received kind of took care of all that. So
that works. No, I don't really have anything to add. I think the next few chapters I don't have much to add because it really picks up.
And I didn't mean to qualify. When I said it really picked up for me around 18, 19 in this area, it was already going full speed for me.
Yeah. It's just, it really,
yes.
It's like we've really got going. You know, everything's kind of,
So next chapter is Miggs, chapter 21. She is suspended. Her case is supposedly closed. All the evidence is erased. Archie actually backed everything up, and he stupidly told everybody.
I know, it's like Archie.
And then he
read the room.
I know. I was like, are you not understanding what's going on here? But he just handed this drive to Miggs, which is supposedly the backup stuff, which I think she just found out that's what it is. Do find out that, or at least it is heavily pushed, that Finkel works for the Freemasons. So I did one thing I did like, since we are building this like three-way throuple, whatever it's going to end up being between these three people, Faye, Lear, and Miggs, is that what you normally do in a romance is that if you're not in the same scene with your romantic partner, then you're often thinking about them, and there should be something about them in the scene, which the scene starts off with Miggs thinking about both Faye and Lear. So I was like, okay, so here we go. She's thinking about both of them, keeping that romance alive there. I just wish it was built up a bit better, or not had it so heavy. Whichever, I mean, either way, I think would have been better. But just the fact that we didn't have it built. That's my only thing. But now that we're in it, I like what he's doing to continue building that relationship between them, the romance. So, yeah, I didn't have anything else. So what about her not wanting to be touched? Oh, that's because in this one is when Archie hugs her, or she hugs him, and then he handshakes, and that's when he hands off the disc. And I wrote down, what about her not wanting to be touched? So
yeah, I had the same question as well. Like, oh, okay, like, because it felt important. Like in the past, we've seen when the author like pointed out something. Like I go back to like when Miggs was surveying the crime scene initially, she mentioned like a thumb drive or whatever. That became a huge thing, and it was just like a casual like mention of it. And so it feels like everything is very purposeful. So if like that was mentioned specifically, like we took a whole conversation to mention this, not like phobia, but this problem. And then later it's like the problem doesn't look like it's there. So I don't know, that part just kind of stuck out to me. But other than that, I kind of like that looks like we're going to go rogue, and it's going to be fun.
I'm sorry, did you already say what your thoughts about this?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Chapter 22 is Miggs. Still, she goes to the museum. She also finds out, or starts off with possibly finding the first kill. So when she's talking about it, the one person, she says lone missing person poster for someone that's not on the chart. They did figure out people fell into kind of like a Venn diagram. And so there was some overlap between some of them, but this person didn't fall in it. And as soon as she said that, I was like, that's the first kill, because always when you watch serial killer movies or shows, the serial killer's very first kill is usually a passion kill in some way that kicks off them becoming a serial killer, and they're the most sloppiest with their first kill. So I was like, okay, that's the first kill. And then she says a couple more, like the next paragraph down, I think. She goes to the museum to get translation of some hieroglyphics that she finds from some of the footage that was on the disk drive that Archie gives her. And we meet Marco, the Egyptologist who works at the museum. And Marco means dedicated to Mars. And we find out he's the silver-haired man.
Yes.
So there's another blonde college student here. Sorry, I'm picking up all the blondes now. I don't know why. I'm sorry I'm picking. Because
it's better than the
the
blonde.
And I did make early on in the chapter, I said, is Marco the Shadow Man? Because I've been calling the Shadow Man the silver-haired guy. And of course, by the end, we do get that.
You got some answers.
Yep, got some answers on that one. And there was a line of dialogue. It was just one sentence line of dialogue that said twice on two different pages, which is that's from the original Great Pyramid of Giza. Because when I read it the second time, I was like, wait, he just told her this. And so it's there twice.
Yeah.
But feels. Oh, and I liked where he said that there's an awakening, Marco says to her. And this is kind of something that, like, if you listen to, I like listening to conspiracy theories and what people think is like lizard men, or, you know, anything and everything that people think that's out there, because it gives me ideas for my stories. And so one conspiracy theory, or I don't know what they call it, but I just listen to them, but is this idea that we're moving into the age of awakening. And when we become fully awakened, then something's going to happen. So depending on which theory you listen to, we're going to learn that there's other aliens. We're going to learn that there are people who live in the center of the earth. We're going to learn who God really is, whatever it is. There's different conspiracies out there. But the idea is we're in an age of awakening right now. So he has that in here, an awakening perhaps. I'm like, oh, this kind of goes back to what's happening right now with people's conspiracy theories. So I thought that was interesting. Yeah, I like the chapter.
Yeah, I thought it was good. I liked the kind of Egyptology stuff brought into it. I was very confused by the Great Pyramid being like in the basement.
Yeah.
Knowing the size of the Great Pyramid. Just not even how it got down there. I can like magic, aliens, whatever, but just literally the size of it and how big that space must have been. Kind of like trying to imagine it. It didn't seem that it was possible.
It reminded me of Warehouse 13. Have you ever seen that?
No.
Oh, it's a fantasy TV show, but it takes place in contemporary days. But there's this warehouse that has all these magical artifacts in it. But the warehouse is like it looks huge, but then it houses even bigger magical artifacts, and it has everything from like Noah's Ark to, I mean, it has like everything in there, and it all fits because it's all magical. So I don't know. I imagine I went immediately to Warehouse 13.
Oh, okay. No, I was just, I was visualizing it in my mind, and he's really, really good at giving you that, with his writing, he gives you the ability to visualize it really well. And then they came down and it was the Great Pyramid. And I was like, what? Like logistics, it's huge.
I don't know. I knew it was down there already. I think it was from the previous like videos that we saw. Like I knew that where he was taking her, that was down there, and I just imagined it. I don't know.
Yeah.
I guess I didn't have as much of it with it. Yeah.
I knew it was there, but somehow her kind of going down into this room, and then I was trying to visualize, and I was like, with that.
I mean, that
that's
like
so big.
Layers of a strata of the earth.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, what is she says? The no touching thing was actually introduced in chapter 1, but that was a long time ago, so I understand. Yeah, I did wonder for a second. I wonder if this went back to chapter 1, and when I thought that, then my mind went to. I remember when we met Migs in chapter 1. She was like this gritty character going through all this angst and stuff, and we kind of like lose all of that when we move into other chapters. So I'm like, what was that angst again? I remember feeling her angst. I thought it was a great introduction, but then I don't remember what that angst was. So I don't feel like it carried through to the next chapters.
Okay.
I don't know. That's my thought. Chapter 23. We are Lear. See Bigsby with the silver-haired guy. Gives chase, reopens wound, learns more about Freemasons responsible for saving everyone. Another blonde person.
I liked this chapter. I felt like it moved things on pacing-wise. Like, no complaints. Like, I think it was a solid chapter.
Yeah.
This is the one that has the scene though that is duplicated. So
that's
third
true.
paragraph in. That's the same
Yeah.
scene that we saw before. Other than we know it's a blonde woman. We didn't know she was blonde before, and it's a fat man this time instead of a bald man. But it's the same scene of a woman running out, a man chasing her, catching her, and taking her back into the room. And that was from chapter 9. Same scene. I thought that was funny. What are you on your period? When because he's trying to hide his knife.
A little cramp, yeah.
I laughed out loud with that one. I did put a note here, and I actually put this as a note in the first third of the book that we have robo birds, and I thought the note I put in the first third of the book when it came up and we never talked about it was because I didn't bring it up. Is that why robo birds? If they didn't have birds, why would they differentiate it as a robo bird? Why not just a bird? But now I put the question is, but there are real animals here. There's cats, there's dogs, there's, even on the same page, we're talking about other animals. There's sheep and stuff like that. So why do we have robo birds? But everything else? Huh?
We had the horses as well.
The horses, yeah. So why do we have robo birds, but everything else is a regular animal? I would love an explanation for that, because robo bird is something that kind of sticks out as part of the world building to me. I mean, it's a very obvious thing, and it's very cool. But then I'm like, why do we have robo birds, but nothing else is robo? Yeah, that's my thought, anyways. And Bigsby, by the way, means abandoned settlement. Oh, I said that already. Oh, Eugene. We find that the boss's name is Eugene, which is the one name that doesn't seem to fit because we know how the boss ends up, right? He's not dead yet, right? He dies in the next one. His name means noble, well-born. And I'm like,
interesting.
yeah.
I love that you're like hyper fixated on the names because I love these little tidbits, but it's not something I would ever do to look up.
It's because it's something I do for my names. All my names mean something. There's a reason why I choose all my names. And I've gone to the point now that I mix languages. So I'll take components like root words and prefixes and suffixes of different languages and put them together to create the word that I want.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, language.
Yeah, very cool. Very cool. But yeah, no, I like this. I like this chapter. It was good.
Me too. Next is the boss. Eugene tells Pan and Roy about the hitman, who's the silver-haired guy, who's the shadow man, who is, I'm thinking, an alien. But he is there in the shadows after Roy and Pan find out from him what has been going on. They leave, and it's assumed they're leaving him to die because he's hung upside down in a cooler. Again, he is naked, so we do have a hanging bit in this one. But it makes sense because Pan specifically goes for his manhood as part of the torture, where it's not, that's not done to Migs, which might be more, I don't know, offensive probably to women if it was, but here it's not. So it makes sense that he's naked if Pan is specifically zeroing on that. But then I'm like, why did he zero in on that, but not with Migs? So I don't know. There's a little bit of difference there, but and then of course, I love how it ends. I love the ending to this. So
the final line in that chapter.
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
I read it like 3 times.
I highlighted it. I got goosebumps. I was like, oh, what a wordsmith.
Yes. I was like, I love this. Yep. And I put alien again. I really think he's an alien. All right, last chapter. Or did you guys have anything else you want to say about this? Or
no, it was good.
Okay. Last one is in Harley's point of view. Third chapter we have in her point of view. By the way, her name means meadow, long field, which makes me think of something peaceful. I'm not really sure if that goes, but maybe it's something that she represents by the end of the story. She did seem kind of peaceful a lot of the times, but okay. So she has a convo with Robo Mom, who she can't really, get her head wrapped around that this is supposed, like she doesn't want this woman, this robo person, imitating her mom, although she has her mom's memories. So it's interesting. I think it's a very lovely. I love that the scene between them. I really like it. Silverhair shows up in the home and says Harley is the message. And it ends there. I'm like, what?
Very sinister. I know.
I wrote nothing else. I didn't have anything else written in here. I just wrote what this chapter is about. I was like, what? You are the message. So I started reading this. I was like, oh, this is Lear. We're not gonna know yet.
I know. Yeah.
No, great ending to that chapter. Like excellent choosing, like to leave us there.
So Emma, you know the answer, but what is your thought, Bethany? Do you think he kills Harley, or what does he do?
I could see it going either way. I think he's just gonna maim her because I feel like there's been just enough investment in the character that it wouldn't make sense. But I wouldn't be upset if she didn't make it because I feel like that would be a tough choice to make as an author, but really powerful. So I just gave you a non-answer. So,
well, I had already thought about how this book reminded me of Game of Thrones. Like Ben said, it kind of reminded me, and I thought, is he going to do the same way of Game of Thrones and kill her off? Because we've got invested in her, like Game of Thrones, you get invested in characters and then they get killed off. I did think about the maiming, especially since there was a little bit of emphasis put on how she really could not get her head wrapped around Robo-Mom. And I thought maybe it would be bad enough that this would be her, that she would be Robo-Sister by the end of this. So I don't know. I feel like it's going to be something terrible. And it does make me think like, gosh, anxious. Yeah, it's anxious, it's anxiety. And I'm like, what could have Harvey done to prevent this? Because Harvey should have told her brother what she said. But then he was also thinking about what did she say? And somehow that communication was not there. And the whole idea behind that, right, is the reason why he was not killed that day by the silver-haired guys, because Harvey said he works for the senator, he'll owe you a favor. But she never passed on the message. So when Lear sees silver-haired man with senator, he chases him, thinking that this is a bad guy, when the silver-haired guy's thinking, no, he owes me a favor. So there's a mix up of the message here. And I was like, this could have been resolved if someone had just, asked the question or passed on the information. Yeah. But it still leaves me in a place of anxiety.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I know it's not going to be good, especially after the brutality of the other scene. Yeah. I don't know, but we're gonna find out.
Yeah, good stuff, Adrian.
I have really enjoyed it, and I hope that I'm glad, Bethany, you said what you said. Like, this is still a really good book, because I think
it's so easy for us because we're like, okay, it's really great. Now, like, let's get into the nitty gritties. Our questions are very like not essential to the plot. So like,
we're just kind of throwing things up, and sometimes we're like, oh yeah, okay, that was a problem for me too, or sometimes it wasn't. Whatever. We're just going into this excessive.
Well, and we're also looking at it as writers and breaking it down as writers.
It is hard to separate that.
We're readers who are they're not in that same zone as us, right? And sometimes I can get there, but it's hard sometimes. You're not going to nitpick all these little things like, but wait, you said this, what about that there? I think it's definitely different. So for those who are interested in reading it, it is a very good book. I'm enjoying it, and I'm ready to finish it. I was like thinking, I like waiting till we get closer to the time we're discussing it to start reading it, because that way it stays fresh in my mind. But I'm like, do I want to wait? I don't think I want to wait. I know. I was like, it's over. I want to read the rest of it. So yeah, I'm really enjoying it. I'm ready to see the conclusion. I'm ready to see what's going to happen. I do have to say I am a bit fearful, and it does go back to kind of what you said, Bethany. It's not, I don't think I thought of it in the same terms, but I'm like, am I going to know enough by the end of this book where I'm going to feel satisfied, or am I going to be in a position where like I need the next book, but it's not yet here?
Yeah, I think my hope is that we're going to have a very explosive, exciting conclusion where we get a lot of our questions answered that we feel satisfied, and it is a full 3-act story structure. But we have also enough questions and, just genuine love for the characters that we're also eagerly anticipating the second book. What I don't want to happen is we get to the climax and then that's it. We don't get the questions answered. We get a setup for book 2 to be the climax like that. I'm nervous about that. Like, don't leave us hanging like that.
But if I think about it, Adrian's talked about some of the reviews he's gotten on the book so far, and I don't think any of them have said the book ends and doesn't answer all the questions. And because I've seen that. I've seen people write reviews where they're saying, don't buy this until the next book is out because you're not gonna get the whole story. So we haven't seen a review like that, although he said he's got a review that he said that he was not very happy with, which what was it?
Reading reviews.
Who wrote the 50 or 1,000 Leagues Under the Sea?
Jules Verne.
No, yeah, it was Jules Verne, but that's not the author I was thinking of. There's an author during the same time period. Can't remember his name. I just heard this the other day and I looked it up and I can't remember his name, but he was an author that wrote back then that he got a bad review. And this is when it was paper, right? They didn't have computer back then. He got a bad review. So he took it, he put it on his desk. He made love to his wife on the paper, on the desk, and then set the paper on fire.
We do what we can to handle those reviews.
Yeah, we do.
At least no one's mailing them to me.
There you go.
Oh my.
And Adrian did say Robo-Birds are getting a side story type deal in the short story collection I'm writing. I'd still like a reason of what's going on. Why do we have Robo-Birds and not anything else is Robo? Even if it is like we do have other Robo animals as well as regular animals. I don't know. It's a question that's kind of hanging there. And because it's brought up, I think it's at least twice now it's brought up. Then again, the first time it was brought up, I'm like, well, why Robo-Birds? If they don't have birds, why would they know the difference? Between Robo-Birds and birds, it would just be birds. So I don't know. Those are small questions, but
we shall see.
I would be interested in the short story collection. All right, we are done discussing, and we will be back in 2 weeks where we're going to be discussing chapters 26 through the epilogue, and there are 38 chapters just for reference, and an epilogue at the end there. And I know we're all excited to continue this reading, so we'll say goodbye, and I'll let everybody, the panelists here, do their outros. We're going to start with Bethany. So you solo.
Oh, okay. Hi, I'm Bethany Vota. I write short stories that I put into collections and mystery thrillers. You can find me on YouTube, but more likely hopping in on other people's streams. And I will see you guys in 2 weeks.
Yay. Hit the right buttons here. All right. And we've got Emma Bennett.
Hiya, I'm Emma Bennett. I'm a UK-based writer. I write contemporary romance and sometimes picture books. Thank you so much, Adrian, for inviting me to take part in this. And thank you, SD, for being an awesome host and keeping the conversation going. I do have a YouTube channel. If you haven't subscribed, go and check it out. I'm sure the links are down in the description below.
Yes, and I do believe they're all there. Adrian has set everything up. I just put the link for Adrian's newsletter into the discussion, the chat, in case if you would like to get the reader magnet. And yeah, I'm Shannon, and I'm going to hit the right buttons here so I don't hit the wrong one. Last one.
Don't make me big again.
Oh yeah, let me take you off the banner. No, Emma Bennett. Brand, right place. All right. So yes, we are going to be back in 2 weeks. Thank you everybody for coming. Thanks Adrian for letting me host. It's been an absolute pleasure reading your book so far, and I'm excited to see where this ends up. And I'm not going to do my outro again, so we're going to leave it there, and we'll see you guys all later.
Bye.